And I'm sure a lot of folks that don't have the background in classical probably wish they did at some point. You guys, as teachers, you're all teachers, I know, but students, do they appreciate Gershwin and what he? Do you guys discuss Mr. Gershwin and his impact?
That's a good question. I think we will more now once they hear it. But I think a lot of times, I'm always geared toward telling my students about certain players or performers, from the past and now, also and people that played certain composers that, it probably is a good idea to talk more about composers. I do talk about certain composers in the music theory theory classes I teach. Because I'm teaching the students how to compose their own works.
So all instruction is individual? Are there classes, or it's all one-on-one?
No, it's private lessons are primarily individual.
Okay.
But there are other classes, like Sarah mentioned, and also I teach private clarinet and also music theory classes, which are smaller classes.
Carrie, when you're out in the community, what's the perception of music schools in general, maybe Pakachoag in particular? Do you think?
Well, Pakachoag has a wonderful reputation, so when I am out in the community, it is easy to discuss the school. But even if people aren't familiar with the school specifically, music is a human universal, and most people, have an appreciation for music. So it's just a matter of, keeping music alive in our community and our society. And that's what I message out. And you'd be surprised that we have a lot of people who respond to that.
I'd be curious as to how many of the students have parents that have played an instrument. Is that a high percentage of the students?
I would say that it's fairly split, that definitely we do have some students that come to the school whose parents have played instruments and have some musical training. But it's actually nice that I think it's that there's also others that come in with no background whatsoever. So it really feels like this diverse community of learners, and everybody's together sort of seeing what they're capable of doing, and everybody's learning from everybody else.
I know on your website you have universities that your students have applied to, so most of them go on to careers in music, or keep it as part of their life, maybe not a career.
Right. There are some that go on to pursue the arts as a major, but I would say for most of them it's just one aspect of their life. But it is really nice to see that so many of the students that graduate can remain engaged in music.
Yeah. Well, I think we'd all agree it makes a person that much better, well-rounded, if you have a little music in your life. Yeah. You guys, the challenges to playing Gershwin, like we're hearing it today, is this challenging material? Is it just run-of-the-mill Gershwin? Where do you rank it in his catalog?
This is challenging. Gershwin himself was a wonderful pianist, and like we said, these were originally composed for piano solo, and even this arrangement where the clarinet takes some of the responsibility for the notes is still quite difficult.
I like how he said that. Some of the responsibility.
Yeah, it is from my end too. I noticed, you can't just go through it and you have to keep an open ear. And I really had to sit down a number of times and study the harmony and all of the, the composition behind it, because, I had to understand it in order to play it.
So this is a short piece and very difficult, so that would mean like an American in Paris is very long. Is that even more difficult, or does that take a whole nother approach?
Yeah,
I think it would be quite difficult.
Yeah.
I'm not aware of a piano version of that, but
okay.
I think the orchestra version would be quite difficult.
Yeah. So personally, is Gershwin, was he a favorite of yours?
He is, yes. And he also had quite large hands, and I can tell that from his writing.
How so?
Oh, well, he writes large intervals, such as tenths. So you have an octave, and then a ninth, and then a tenth. And a tenth is quite a stretch.
Yeah. So is it fair to say George was the more identifiable of the brothers? Although Ira was the lyricist, right?
Yeah.
As I understood it, yeah.
Right.
And I read he got the piano was purchased by the parents for him, but George kind of fell in love with the instrument, as I learned in my crack research before this interview.
That's what I found also. He started rather late in life, at age 10, and it's amazing that in his rather short life that he composed and did so much.
Speaking of that, what do you think is the best age for a young person to begin an instrument, the study of an instrument?
Oh gosh, that's
Well,
very depending on the instrument, I think.
yeah. Our early childhood program, which runs birth through age 4, is just a really important component to setting the stage for future music success. So we actually really encourage people to get their children engaged in music at that very early age. A lot of people don't realize that just like a young baby is taking everything in before they speak and figuring out then how to talk, it's just the same way with music,
Okay,
that all this sound is going into their head and then they begin to process it and sing. So it's singing and movement that is the basis of everything else that we do. And then as they come out of that program, we actually have a few Suzuki-trained teachers, which is a very specialized method.
That's for very young students? Or?
Yes,
Yeah.
and older students too, but it's particularly effective for very young students. So we do, in fact, start some children at around maybe age 4 or 5 on violin or perhaps piano or guitar.
Okay.
But other than that, it does depend on the instrument. So 6 or 7 for piano or violin, and the wind instruments, they usually need to be a little bit older.
Boy, you talk about 10 being late for somebody to start. That's kind of an eye-opener, huh?
But it's never too late.
Never too late, never too
We do
late.
have adult students, yes.
We're going to school on this Wednesday edition of Jazz New England here on WICN. Again, from the Pakachoag Music School, we have Executive Director Sarah Smongeski, we have Manager of Development Carrie Stearns, and our musicians this afternoon, pianist Curtis Smith, and on the clarinet, Nikki Beaudry. We're enjoying Gershwin's Prelude. So it's 1, 2, and 3. There are 3 preludes, right?
That's right.
So I love how classical stuff is named. Nice and easy, 1, 2, and 3. So we have another piece of music for us. We're going to hear number 2 now.
Yes.
How would this differ from number 1? Is that a silly question?
No, it's not. This one is, it's very different in style because this one is andante, which means it's a walking tempo, moves slowly, cantabile and expressive. So in a singing style, very expressive. And I think, to me, this is very reminiscent of what he writes later on for Porgy and Bess. You know, it's all very
Okay.
famous summertime. And this comes before that. And he
Okay.
wrote this, many years before. So, but there are elements of it in there. He has that
All right.
that melodicism in there.
Let's have a listen. And again, we're enjoying the classical side of Gershwin this afternoon on this Wednesday edition of Jazz New England here at 90.5 WICN with Jazz Plus for New England, enjoying from the Pakachoag Music School, pianist Curtis Smith on the clarinet, Nicky Beaudry. And again, we have the executive director, Sarah Smongeski, and manager of development, Carrie Stearns, joining us this afternoon on this Wednesday edition of Jazz New England. Again, you guys, thanks so much for coming in. Nicky, the clarinet, I always hear, the Gershwin jazz pieces that have been jazzified, all the classical stuff, all the Broadway stuff, you always hear a clarinet. So did he write with that in mind, or was that his favorite instrument?
I was trying to find out more about that because he must have heard some very famous guys of that time or that day, and trying to figure out, who he was listening to. Maybe, Jimmy Noon, or I don't know if it was too early.
From the Ellington Orchestra,
or Jimmy Hamilton from the Ellington Orchestra, because these guys were amazing clarinet players, and he must have been hearing them and really wanted to incorporate that sound. But actually, this piece is not arranged until much later. This one was actually arranged like years and years.
So would this work for an alto sax?
Yeah.
Or another,
No, I think it would.
Yeah.
I definitely think it would. I think you really have to think about, what kind of sound. But I think it definitely would.
Yeah.
It would depend on, the range and how somebody could arrange it.
Curtis, you mentioned that Gershwin, one of your favorite guys. Your students, do they share your enthusiasm for Gershwin, or how do younger students relate to that?
Oh, it's tough for a younger student to play Gershwin because of the
span you mentioned. Yeah.
Yes. His arrangements of popular tunes, I have students play those, and they enjoy it.
Yeah. All right. Well, we've got a whole new interest in George Gershwin here after this program. You guys, again, on the administrative side, we always ask musicians about goals and their future. Each year, do you set goals for the school, or how do you look at each coming year and the future and that kind of thing?
We do,
Yeah.
although our goals, we tend to look about 2 or 3 years ahead.
Okay.
We are working at this time on the underlying issue, like actually a lot of organizations, sustainability. That we obviously, our intention is to be around 100 years from now. So our goals are, what are the pieces we're going to put in place to make sure that that is the case.
Yeah. Mention the website so people can, if they're not familiar with the school.
Sure, we're at www.pacmusic, pacmusic.org.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of information on the website, all of our programming, bios on our wonderful faculty members.
Yeah. Carrie, anything surprised you in your years with the school as you've seen it grow? I know you guys had hoped for that, but any surprises along the way as you've become kind of an anchor here in the musical community?
Well, I'm fortunate. My experience with the school has been in multiple ways. I first became involved with the school as a parent. My 8-month-old at the time, I enrolled in the Music Together program.
8-month-old?
8-month-old,
Wow.
yes. And before she was really talking, she had her first musical experience, and just seeing how it engaged her inspired me. So I started volunteering with the school and working with the spring event that we hold every year as one of our major fundraisers, and then began to work for the school and letting others know about the impact that music can have on a personal level, impact as family, because I had a wonderful bonding experience with my daughter in the Music Together program, and also as the community, just seeing how performances like our spring event reaches people and how they get to have a shared musical experience. So
you mentioned the spring event. You have one coming up. Tell us about that.
We do. On March 24th, Saturday, March 24th, I should say, we will have 2 performances, a 1 p.m. show and a 7:30 p.m. show. And the theme this year is the Roaring '20s.
So that means jazz, huh?
Absolutely. And we encourage people to come join us in celebration of the innovative and entrepreneurial spirit of the music of the 1920s.
Right. And that's going to be the 24th. That's
The
a
24th,
Saturday?
March 24th.
That's a Saturday?
It is a Saturday,
Yeah.
yep.
All
And
right.
we have 2 shows, and tickets are on sale now at our website.
All right. Great. Nicky, Curtis, the best part of teaching at the Pakachoag for you guys? What do you like the best?
It's the dedication from the students.
Yeah.
It's more than just after-school music lessons. We have recitals and performance classes, and I find that my students are very dedicated to music.
Yeah, I would say the same, that in the environment at the school, there's such a relaxed environment for the high standard that's set by the teachers, and all everybody that teaches there is also a performer. And the families that come in are all very committed and dedicated to seeing their children learn what they're doing. And that just, when we're performing, we're just giving back to them. And that's really, just a wonderful cycle.
What's the secret to getting kids to practice? Or do you, with your students, maybe you don't have to do that. They're practicing on their own, or is that always a challenge?
Oh, I like to tell my students that they bring character to their pieces. That if you can bring out the character of the piece, and they become kind of like actors.
Interesting.
Well, that's good. I have to use that myself.
Well, now that we've celebrated Gershwin and created this awareness for your students, I'm anxious to hear the questions that come in the future about who this Gershwin guy was and what he did. So maybe we'll see some wide eyes opening when they discover all the great things that George Gershwin has done.
Oh, I think so. Yeah.
You guys, thanks so much for coming in. It's been a pleasure to meet you all, and I really appreciate the great job you're all doing in making sure that music stays in the forefront in our community. And so, again, good things ahead for the Pakachoag Music School, I'm sure.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your support.
Yeah, thank you.
And we're going to hear one more prelude.
Yes.
All right. This is number 3, right? Any special setup for this?
This one's fast.
And again, our thanks to the Pakachoag Music School here in the Worcester area. Again, pianist Curtis Smith, we heard on the clarinet Nikki Beaudry, and our thanks to Executive Director Sarah Smongeski and Manager of Development Carrie Stearns for joining us this afternoon here on Jazz New England. It's 90.5 WICN. We are Jazz Plus for New England.